I would like to introduce our next keynote speaker, or the keynote speaker, I'm sorry, for the conference, Janie Shanahan from Bridgewater State University. Dr. Shanahan is Director of Undergraduate Research at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts. In her previous positions as Associate Professor of English and Director of the Honors Program at St. Mary's University in Minnesota. Dr. Shanahan wrote the curriculum for the Council on Undergraduate Research Institute on Creative Inquiry and Undergraduate Research in the Arts and Humanities. She has facilitated over a dozen CUR institutes for faculty in the sciences, mathematics, and social sciences, and she is the CUR counselor in the Undergraduate Research Program Directors Division. Dr. Shanahan earned her PhD in literature from Marquette University with a focus on multi-ethnic literatures of the United States, particularly Chicana and Chicano and African American literary traditions. Please give a big round of applause to Dr. Shanahan.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here. I am thrilled to be with people who share, I think, the passion for engaging students in some of the best practices that we can provide in institutions of higher ed, and with fellow educators and administrators who are really seeking ways to make these opportunities available to as many of our students as possible. I thought I would, oh, that's not what I want. I don't know why it's not going to my first one. We tested this. Let's start here. Let me see. Drag the blue. Oh, because it thinks it's further along. I don't know why. Thank you. Now we'll go full screen. Wonderful, thanks. I wanted to give you a little bit of context about Bridgewater State University in the Boston area. We're one of the public institutions in the state of Massachusetts, of course, and we have about 12,000 students, 10,000 undergraduates, so we're a primarily undergraduate institution. And we started an undergraduate research program 15 years ago, really in response to a particular need that is fairly distinct to Massachusetts. And that is because we have so many institutions of higher education in a small region, and of course some of the most prestigious institutions in the world concentrated there, that students at the public institutions, well, there's a whole thing, too, of New England and their private institutions versus the public. That I'm a native Californian, and the UC system is our gold standard, right? So I didn't understand that when I moved to New England, why the public institutions would be seen as a lot less valuable. But it's part of the culture that's taking a while to change, to shift. But the students in the state institutions, even the most academically motivated, the most successful undergraduates, were not competing for graduate and professional programs in the region. Had to move across the country, essentially, to get any attention from graduate and professional schools. And so in 1999, the president then, Adrian Tinsley, for whom our undergraduate research program is named, had listened to faculty about the students who were able to kind of get through that vetting process, and they were the ones who had had a distinctive undergraduate research project, something that they could really point to that showed a long-term commitment to something, perhaps even a line of inquiry that they could continue in graduate school, but certainly to be able to tell the graduate programs that they have the kind of skills and attitudes that would make them successful in graduate school. So the program began with that pretty focused purpose. I don't know that anyone at Bridgewater State today would say that's why we do it, though. So the institution has been transformed by this, and certainly our whole curriculum throughout the university. So you all know about high impact practices, at least in the terminology that's being most often used by the AAC&U, that the students who participate in what are typically identified as about 10 of these high impact practices are showing much greater learning outcomes than their peers who do not participate or who do not participate in as many. Some of the AAC&U data actually show that these compound benefits for students. So if they're involved in undergraduate research as well as they studied abroad, all the better. So what are some of the other ones? People know what we're talking about when we're saying the AAC&U high impact practices? Okay, some people are saying no. So anybody, okay. Help me out if I don't get all 10. Study abroad in undergraduate research, internships, service learning, learning cohorts or communities, first year experiences or seminars, capstones, writing intensive experiences, core programs, or perhaps a general education that really has a sense of tradition and identity. And that's 9. What am I missing? I did say first year experiences. Okay, it may come to me later, but you get the idea. What's happening in the research, though, is it doesn't seem to be that all of these things are necessarily of the same value. George Q., who's most commonly associated with this research, has done the most work on it, says that undergraduate research is showing the strongest results, but study abroad and internships are right up there. The 3 most valuable things students can do while they're in college. And they're called high impact because they're quite beneficial for students while they are students and for many years after graduation. So some of the first longitudinal data on high impact practices is being published now, and they're looking at people 10 and 20 years after graduation, and when they're asked what was the most valuable thing you did in college for your career or for your life past your undergraduate degree, they're saying that research I did with that faculty member or that internship or things like that. They are being measured in very quantitative ways. We can look at students who come into college with very similar qualifications on paper, similar high school GPAs, similar test scores, and if one of those students gets involved in research and the other one doesn't, the data are showing again and again that the student who's getting involved with research is much more likely to turn maybe a B average into an A average, and sometimes much more dramatically than that. They are more likely to stay in college and to graduate in a timely way. They're much more likely, perhaps that's obvious, to pursue graduate or professional education. And then the data also shows some really interesting qualitative results as well that I know that AAC&U is interested in this meaningful quality, or meaningful philosophy of life, that students who have these opportunities that expand beyond the classroom tend to be able to articulate their role in the world in a more confident way. Their goals for their lives feel more promising and clear. They also are demonstrating leadership skills and better oral and written communication, according to their faculty and then their employers. These high impact practices affect every student of every demographic group at every kind of institution in positive ways. The data are coming from all different kinds of colleges and universities, from 2-year to Research 1 institutions, and with students of first generation, continuing generation status, students of different races and ethnic backgrounds, gender identity, etc. But what has been most exciting, again and again, particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, is that we see the biggest gains with the students who are from groups that have been underrepresented in higher education. Students of color have a tremendous gain from getting involved in undergraduate research, study abroad, and internships. There's a much bigger jump. Students who are first in their families to go to college, students who are Pell Grant eligible, so qualify for low income status. This also applies to women in male-dominated fields. So anyone who's been really underrepresented in that area or in higher ed in general sees these big jumps. There are lots of theories about this. They tend to come down to the relationship that student has with a faculty mentor, that relationship opens the doors to all kinds of things. On a practical level, they get great recommendation letters. They get letters that speak very specifically to their work ethic and what they can do. They get networked to that faculty mentor's contacts at other universities or at graduate programs. But something shifts inside the students as well. There have been 25 years of research out of the University of Michigan to show that students who get engaged with a research mentor visit their other professors' office hours at something like 20 times the rate of their peers. It's like a veil is pulled away, and they're not intimidated anymore about, or they understand that they're part of this higher ed community and that they can seek out the help that they need, or they can engage in the dialogue in a much more confident way. So quite exciting. Some of my colleagues in the Council on Undergraduate Research say when you see things like this, when you see those kinds of gains in retention, you might start to think that it's a moral imperative to provide these opportunities for our students. At my own institution, Bridgewater State, we have an NSF STEP grant that is specifically funding students of color and low-income students in the summer before they begin freshman year who are majoring in STEM disciplines to come for 3 weeks, do that summer bridge kind of experience. Some of you may be familiar with those kinds of programs, where they get involved in the research that's going on in the lab. Other undergraduate students peer mentor them. They live in the residence hall, they eat in the cafeteria for those 3 weeks. They know the campus. They love that then when everybody else comes in September, they know where things are. They've already made a cohort of friends. Our retention rate of those students in STEM disciplines is higher than our retention of white upper middle class students in STEM disciplines now. It's an 83% retention rate. And that's just part of a bigger national picture that we're seeing. They're called high impact because of all the gains, everything from creative and critical thinking to that independent thinking and logic, being able to solve problems, but also being very excited about the discipline, really having a spark and then seeing that really blaze into a passion for what they're studying. They become more open and curious. Those open-ended questions are suddenly exciting rather than intimidating. And then the skills of analysis, communication, and leadership. In other words, everything I think that any of us in any of our disciplines would hope for from our students, from that undergraduate experience. And not for nothing, it's also what employers want. So we, like I said, at Bridgewater State, where we started looking at what about graduate and professional schools, what we're really interested in now is, okay, we got students going to some of the best graduate programs in the country and getting assistantships and all those things that we hoped would happen. That's happening. But what we're also seeing is that our students who engage in research are better candidates for jobs. And in an economy in which recent college graduates have among the highest unemployment rates, this is very important. You probably remember last March of 13, the Chronicle published a study. It was also on American Public Radio's Marketplace show. It was distressing. They surveyed 700 major employers around the country and found that half of them said that they had positions available for recent college graduates and could not find recent college graduates with the skills they needed, at the same time that this group has this high unemployment rate. And so you might worry that, oh, they're saying we need students who can write HTML code or something. And that was not it. They were saying that the recent college graduates that they were interviewing did not have basic proficiencies. They grouped, in the Chronicle article, the reporters grouped the proficiencies into 3 areas. One is adaptability, and what they put under that was also the ability to take knowledge gained in one area and apply it in a different one. So being flexible and malleable with what one already knows and being able to take on something new. The oral and written communication skills came up again and again, and we've been hearing about this for years. And the ability and perhaps the willingness to engage in complex problem solving. That employers are saying their recent college grads they're interviewing are not demonstrating that they would see something through, that when they encounter difficulty that they would do good problem solving and have a work ethic or commitment to working it out. And then this is a list that's more full of what the employers most often said the recent college graduates were lacking. So they all come under those 3 areas: the written and oral communication, the decision-making, problem-solving, analysis, research, applying their knowledge to new situations, adaptability, and managing multiple priorities. One of the pull quotes in the article is from an employer who said, "This is not about technical skills. We cannot find recent college graduates who know how to think." Yikes, right? This is distressing, except for those of us who are really pushing for more engaged learning, for research and scholarly work, because these are the very areas that we're able to show students are demonstrating gains in. There are hordes of studies, whoops, I didn't mean to go that fast, that are demonstrating that the students who are conducting research are strongest in the same areas that we want, the graduate and professional schools want, but also what's wanted in the workplace in a great variety of fields. Why does undergraduate research in particular lead to these outcomes? Beyond the mentor relationship, which can help open a lot of doors, George Q. and others are talking about the fact that students who engage in what are called actively contested questions are much more willing to stick with the work and put the effort in. So they're not presented with static bits of information that they then have to assimilate, but that they are really engaging in questions that people in this field don't know the answer to, and that people in this field think are really important, and they get to be part of that questioning and exploring. That sense of excitement that comes when students are encouraged to answer those important questions. And then on the skill level, they've got very highly valued real-world skills, tools, resources, technologies that they've been practicing with in their scholarly work. Okay. I was in the morning session on presenting sharing undergraduate research, disseminating it, and somebody made a really good point about the term research being it's a tricky term, because I was one of the founding members of the Council on Undergraduate Research's Arts and Humanities Division. It took a lot of years to have an Arts and Humanities Division, because a lot of my colleagues in the arts and humanities would say, we don't do research. Or we do research in order to do our scholarship. Like, the research is the background thing. It's not the most important thing in the humanities. I might do some research to see what other scholars have produced on this topic, but what I'm going to bring to it is my scholarship. So we get into trouble with language right away. But so I'm early in this talk letting you know that when I'm saying undergraduate research, and I think it's fair to say that my colleagues in the national organization, Council on Undergraduate Research, understand it this way too. We're talking about a whole range of scholarly opportunities for students that are appropriate to the various disciplines. They usually fall into one of three general categories. So the traditional undergraduate research, when the Council on Undergraduate Research was founded by chemists 30 years ago, still remains as a very important part. Students assisting faculty and then collaborating with faculty once they've learned the skills on the faculty member's research agenda. So the faculty member has already a scholarly agenda going or has a pool of research going, and students can enter into that in various ways. Another is more prominent in the arts and humanities, in which students are doing an independent project. The honors thesis, for example, is on this model with faculty mentorship. So the student may have developed the entire question. The faculty mentor might not know that much about that particular aspect of the field, but can kind of read around it to mentor that student. But what we're going to focus on here is the third, and I think the one that's been most neglected, and that's the students who are conducting research, or what we might call inquiry-based projects that are in the curriculum, that are part of what we're doing already as educators. So just a definition of inquiry-based learning from Stevenson, referring to approaches to learning that are based on students' investigations of questions, scenarios, or problems with the instructor facilitating, so that students in the course, whatever it is, are encouraged to engage with authentic questions that the professor himself, herself, doesn't necessarily know the answer to, or there is not a set established answer to it already that they're trying to get you to guess or something, that it is really open to that inquiry. It's not just, well, my students do projects, so that's inquiry-based learning. It's that those students are learning some deep ways of thinking and doing those skills that for most of us are rooted in a disciplinary tradition. What I'm most excited about having more and more research and inquiry-based learning in the curriculum is that we're taking this high-impact practice that we know makes a significant difference for students, and especially for our students who may be most at risk of leaving the university. And we're taking it from that periphery, where just a few of our students got to participate, to the center of what we're doing. It's the core of our mission. My colleague in the Council on Undergraduate Research calls undergraduate research a boutique experience at too many places. So the students with the highest GPAs, or who got invited into the honors program from the very beginning, they get to do an honors thesis, good for them. Or students who are very confident, and perhaps they have parents with advanced degrees, they know that they can go talk to a faculty member and say, I'd like to work in your lab, or that kind of thing. So those students who had that motivation and that confidence, or even just the grades or the test scores, to be invited in, we still want them to have those opportunities, but not only those students, because we're missing then the students who can gain the most from it. I have so many stories, and perhaps you do too, of students who did not see themselves as scholars at all. I have these two twin brothers, Adam and Alan Shane, identical twins. One is at the University of Minnesota in a PhD program, and the other at University of Wisconsin in a PhD program. They said they started college with the goal of maintaining the minimum GPA for NCAA requirements. They laugh about that because they're one of my best stories, because they got connected because of a research experience in a gen ed course that they said was the most exciting thing they had ever done, that they just, unfortunately had not had a high school experience that connected with anything. So we get those students, we get the students who think, I'm not sure that I belong here. and then they'll find something that they really love and take off from there. The other problem with that boutique approach is that at most places, this is not counting in faculty workload in any meaningful way. So at my institution, faculty get 1/3 of a credit for teaching an independent study. At my former institution, they got nothing. Either way, that is a lot of work that's not being compensated. Same with honors theses. At my institution, they get 1/2 of a credit for mentoring an honors thesis, that kind of thing. If it's part of your teaching load anyway, that's the most just scenario for you as well. So it helps your students, of course, but it also, I think, doesn't take all this, just out of our hide. It's essentially the most cost-effective way we have to make something that's highly valuable to students available to all of them. I hope we get to a point where we can have every student study abroad, but we're a long way from that. And to have every student involved in an internship. But for now, we can get this is something we do. We're scholars, so we can bring them into the curriculum. It ensures access then in a very, levels the playing field, if you will, for students across the college or university. I like a lot, this came from an AAC&U talk a few years ago, this concept of the student as scholar, in which scholar is conceived in terms of attitude or intellectual posture or frame of mind. So to come back to Ed's talk this morning, the plenary talk, not about knowledge and skills, but about this this perception of the self as one who is an evaluator, a critical thinker, someone who's in discourse with others. What they're calling for, and what I'm echoing, is that we see each assignment and each course as part of an integrated scholarly experience. I have colleagues in the College of Education, I think that who are the leaders on most of our campuses in this regard, where the way in which students build their careers as teachers through this scaffolded curriculum as a cohort is really, I think, a model for how some of our other disciplines can do this a bit better, that we can become more integrated and communicative with each other about what's going on in the curriculum. It's not, I don't think we're going to have a great deal of success the way that many of our departments are going with kind of these haphazard sets of research experiences, though those, each one of those is better than nothing, and not just saying, well, my students write research papers, so they're doing undergraduate research. It's much more intentional than that and integrated, cohesive throughout the curriculum. And I've found the Council on Undergraduate Research has identified 4 criteria that have been associated with very successful undergraduate research. So the characteristics that make it a high impact practice. And so I tend to use that as a way of thinking about assignments, and when I work with departments on their whole program curriculum, where are these characteristics? They should be part of our planning. And the first is that it's faculty mentored. That faculty member has a significant role to play, and I'll say more about each of these in a moment. The second, that it's original, and that can be a difficult term too, but basically that it's not a rehash of what other researchers have said. It's not a book report, in other words, that there's some original thinking and knowledge creation that's coming into that experience. That it's rooted in the discipline. So I've actually talked with other people in the humanities who've said to me, well, I'm not doing undergraduate research. I don't do a scientific model. Or I don't do empirical research. It was like, right, you're not supposed to. So we have to look at the way in which scholars work in the disciplines and bring students into that in appropriate undergraduate ways. And finally, that it's disseminated, that students have an opportunity to share what they're doing with others. So in terms of the faculty mentor, having faculty members employ students as research lackeys, basically, like washing dishware, or in the sciences or in the humanities, going and photocopying articles or something, is not undergraduate research. It can be training for getting there. So every student needs to learn those rudimentary skills in order to do something more sophisticated. Or in the psychology lab, you know, they're entering data, but they're not doing analysis yet. All of that has to happen, but that's not where the impact comes in. The student really has to have a learning process and become intellectually engaged, himself or herself, that they've got a stake in it. And I like going back to the original meaning of the word mentor. I love that on the national scene of talking about undergraduate research, we always talk about the faculty member as a mentor, not the research sponsor or something, but a mentor, as someone who's that trusted and wise counselor and teacher. So it's a bit beyond the role of the classroom instructor, in that you're still disseminating, sharing with students the knowledge and the skills and the joys of your field, but you're also demonstrating in a kind of apprentice way what it's like to be this kind of scholar in the field. So if I, as an English professor, drop off a research paper assignment with my students and collect the research papers 3 weeks later, I am not mentoring undergraduate research. But if I construct the assignment with them, especially in an upper division course, we talk about what would be good questions in this field. What are other scholars talking about? And we kind of hone the questions together. And then they do some annotations of a bibliography, and we talk about that in class. Or various students present on what they learned so far in their research. And then drafts come in, and we have some peer review guided by me, or we meet. Sometimes I cancel the regular class period, and we meet in small groups in my office and do some round robin on the drafts. All of those kinds of interventions that I do as a mentor is increasing the impact, is really making that a significant experience for these students. The most effective mentors in the research literature are the ones, as Cristino Gonzalez puts it, who promote shared power. They're not just dispensing advice and giving out their knowledge, but they're sharing the power with the student. They're saying, these are the questions that I'm really excited about, and inviting you into that and sponsoring your participation as a student in that, and then advocating for you to see like where this could take you next or how this might fit in with your goals. Always reminding the students through their example that the work is the students. So you might have helped me with my research early on. Now you're ready to go, and this is your take on it. Or maybe you have your own angle on what my research area is, and I'm going to delight in what you bring to it. And that students understand that they really are intellectual owners of the work. Okay, the second characteristic is that it's original. And we've had these, knockdown, drag-out arguments in the Council on Undergraduate Research meeting about what is original. Does that mean that it has to be peer-reviewed by, scholars in the field, and if it doesn't, meet that standard, then it's not undergraduate research? No. What we mean is that the student is actively participating in the creation and discovery of knowledge. It might not be enough of a discovery. It rarely is enough of a discovery that it warrants publication in a professional journal. That doesn't mean it's not a tremendously valuable discovery for that student's own development, and perhaps pieced together with some others, it gets us there, to a publishable piece. Carrie Caruxtis and Tim Algren have a really nice, meaty book on research-supportive curricula. And I pulled some of the criteria that they identified. Oh, by the way, I see some people taking notes, and that is great. I did make the Prezi public, so you can find it by searching for my name, but I'll also send Anton the link in case that's easier. But the criteria that I thought were most interesting for really thinking about undergraduate research in the curriculum is that, are we asking students to confront novel and important ideas? So again, getting away from things that have been well established, that's the background. Now how do we move forward from there? That they have an experience in what the data, I put the quotation marks around data, because in my field the data is probably primary texts. In other fields, it's whatever is the information or the what's to be analyzed in your field. So to have an experience of gathering that and of analyzing that. Do they get to do research that applies to real problems? And do they work iteratively so that they understand that how scholars work is asking a question, gathering some information, refining the question, realizing that the question actually is moot, or that the question needs to be expanded or refined in whatever way. And that they're getting feedback along that process that's meaningful, that can help them make those evaluations. And that the student knows that he or she is increasing that intellectual ownership over time. That when in a first year course, I would provide some research questions for students and talk about why these are questions that are important and exciting in the field right now, and show some examples of that. But by the time they're in a 300 level course, I might give broader topic areas and say, come back with some questions you have about this after you've done some looking around. And then we refine the questions together, so that by the time that student is in a capstone, that student is posing questions that are much more contextual, that these are the questions that will lead them to be able to do something successful with whatever amount of time they have. They're not asking the kinds of questions they'll need to spend a lifetime answering, for example. So I really like this way. Both of them, I think Tim Elgren's a chemist too. Carrie Caruxis is a chemist. But they, I think, talk about this in ways that apply across disciplines. The third characteristic, that it's rooted in the discipline, I think is pretty self-evident, that the epistemology of the field should be what drives this. The processes that we use, the methods, the resources, what counts as evidence, what's an accepted product, that should be determined by the scholars in the discipline. I have an ongoing fight with a very good friend who's a provost who only allows students to present posters at their campus symposium. And I think that's a great way to communicate to your art and humanities scholars on campus that their products are not valued. So I hope nobody's going to throw any darts at me. But that's a way of communicating that what each of us does as scholars is really valued in a collegial way. It's the same kind of thing if you've ever served on a tenure or promotion committee, and you have to have these conversations, kind of what counts. And those are good conversations to have. And the default should be we trust our colleagues in those fields. So what my colleague in music says is scholarly, that we can go with that as a standard for the music students, for example. And finally, that it's disseminated or shared in some way. There is, if any of you have had this experience, I bet you would bear me out. As soon as students move from, I'm writing this research paper to my professor, I know they don't necessarily say it that way, but they do when they say things like, what do you want in the paper? Or they have the rubric and they're checking off things. I did all the things you wanted. That's just soul killing. And it also invites the kind of problems that we're having with, why not just buy a paper off the internet or copy and paste from other sources, because you haven't made any commitment yourself to it. But if I say, you're going to be presenting these papers at our campus symposium, and your peers from other classes are required to attend, and the provost might stop by, there's a whole new level of engagement, but also commitment in owning that work, because somebody else is going to engage in it. They're going to take some pride in it and responsibility. And also to have a sense that there's a discourse community out there. There are other people thinking about this. And they want, when I bring students to NCUR, the National Conference on Undergraduate Research, that's the most fun, is there'll be somebody in the audience, a student or a professor, who's interested in the same thing. And they've made a little discourse community right there. So that broader dialogue, when they're asked questions and they have to think about responses, is invaluable. And then other people give you feedback, and you might change your mind about something or nuance the point a little bit as that comes in. So I'm a big proponent of having those kind of low-cost opportunities for students to get their work out there, even if they're just presenting to other members of the class. Even that makes a difference. We have at Bridgewater State, I don't know why everybody doesn't do this. I think it's a great thing. We have a symposium every December we call the Mid-Year Symposium. It is only for research, scholarly work in 100 and 200 level courses. So we have 625 presenters each December of first-year students at the end of first-year writing or first-year seminar presenting the paper that they, did some secondary research to produce. And the idea is, and everybody comes because other professors create an assignment for their students to go as audience members or things like that, or the students who present posters will say, I think that was the dean who came to talk to me about my paper. So we're communicating as a scholarly community that these incipient initial attempts at learning the scholarship are valuable and an important part of the process. Perfect time for a transition. All right. So the last part is just to talk about what I mean about a research-rich curriculum. Essentially, the kinds of active learning environments that focus on actively contested questions, where there are discovery processes in place with strong faculty-student interaction, and that ultimately in the curriculum that students are designing to some degree the projects and assignments themselves. My former institution, St. Mary's University of Minnesota, in the Department of English, we had a universal senior thesis requirement. Anybody have that, like where every student writes a capstone research project? Conceptualized a project anywhere close to that. So then you think that's really big. That's 5 times bigger than most of what I've written, right? So you think your question needs to be bigger. Or they would be so worried about it, they would choose a question that they already knew the answer to or that they could be perfectly safe in. And I'm not even kidding. The last time I taught that course before we did our curriculum overhaul, I had a student whose research question for her senior thesis was, is there Christian imagery in the Narnia series? And we were like, I think she knew that answer in 5th grade. And in her senior year of college was so stressed out about this assignment for which she didn't feel prepared that it was like, I got this, So we did a backward design curriculum overhaul. The whole thing took us 6 years to have everything in place, but we saw results within a couple of years, significant changes. Among the things we did, we've written about this in more detail, but we created scaffolds, so that metaphor that comes from building construction, that you provide lots of support early in the process, and then as progress is made, you can start to take some of that support away, and it stands. So we built in all kinds of supports in the 100 and 200 level courses, and then, started to pull some of that away in the 300 level content courses, and then our 400 level seminars, until we felt that students could really explore something more independent by that senior thesis. We also added a gateway course because students were taking courses fairly haphazardly, and it's hard to change that. We'd want them to take things in particular order, and it didn't work because we couldn't offer that semester or whatever. But by talking with each other, that was crucial. Sharing assignments with each other, which was radical for us. Rubrics, we realized there were a lot of redundancies in our curriculum and a whole lot of gaps. And so that we could say, well, I don't know that we need another that kind of assignment in our 300 level kind of heavy content courses. What if we brought this from the 400 level seminar and introduced it here? And lots of hours of conversation and sharing those assignments and rubrics and expectations with each other. And we are so pleased with where that has ended up. We saw immediately after adding the gateway course that students were getting prepared for senior thesis, because then we're saying in that 200 level course that you can't take other courses in the major until you've got that course. You're going to be writing a senior thesis, and that's going to be really exciting because you'll finally get to dive into something that you love. So these are the kinds of things we're doing now. And you're going to see this again in Dr. Ayers' course next year. Or Dr. Ayers could say, I know, because we all owned kind of that curriculum for that gateway course, even though I think 3 people total taught it, we all felt that we had invested in it. So we could say, I know, how students will say, I never saw that before. No, I know you did, because I was part of the planning for that course. And then when we get to those 400 level courses, to say, remember when you did this here? This is that same thing at a more sophisticated level. So this is the jump that we're hoping that you can make. So that those explicit connections that the faculty are making make it more clear to students that this fits together as a cohesive curriculum, that there's a culture of scholarship in this field, and I'm being invited into it and kind of apprenticed into it. Okay, I'm out of time, so I'm going to just briefly go through the others. At the University of San Diego in the Department of Chemistry, my friend and colleague Mitch Malachowski also went through this and has written about it, where they wanted every student in their chemistry program to have a significant undergraduate research experience. So they had to prepare the curriculum so that could happen. A couple of the key things that they did, for example, is they set aside sections of OChem that were just for majors so that they could do more research early on in the curriculum, and then they had some upper division research project courses that they introduced. So what my English department and Mitch's chemistry department have in common is actually quite a bit. We said students should have early and frequent exposure to the research opportunities. From their first days in this program, you see what it is to be a scholar. That we start to talk about research questions that are contextualized. What are others, this part of a discourse community, what are others asking about and doing in this field? And then we're helping them design how they will approach that and then see that through. That they are learning to evaluate the data or the information in that field and then using it to revise that question or develop new ones. And that they can say, this is important because this builds on somebody else's work or whatever, and the nature of the work and its significance are clear. We found, and the research bears this out, that when we made these changes, our students' assessments, their grades went up, definitely stronger research skills, and greater knowledge in the discipline. That the process really impacted these other areas. So within these courses, we looked at where there's a research essay, can we do something more with it, like give students an opportunity to present that? Or could they create an online resource out of this? I have a friend who teaches first-year writing, and one of the assignments is that students revise a Wikipedia entry. It's kind of a rudimentary level of like engaging in this discourse that's out there. Or that they are invited in, use these tools that people in the field use, and I'll show you how to practice with them. A lot of people in education, business, technology, these pre-professional programs, social work, have practicum experiences. When research is brought into that, we see our students who are student teachers. Bridgewater State is known for our education program. We were founded by Horace Mann as a normal school, as a teacher training. We still have it. We train like 1 out of 9 teachers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Those students going into their student teaching are going in now with this whole like research study as part of it. They're doing action research in the classroom. We're taking what's found in the research literature and applying it to something else. I have a friend who teaches a second-year seminar called Movies and Mental Illness in the psychology department. Second-year seminar. Students learn about particular disorders in the DSM, and they see some films in which this particular disorder is illustrated, and then can critique the way that it's presented in the media, for example. And lots of empirical projects can be done at various levels of the curriculum. Allied health students at our institution did a pre-test about flu shots. This is timely. I actually got influenza this year. They surveyed students about whether they were intending to get a flu shot this year, then did an information campaign on campus, then did a post questionnaire with those same students. Did you end up getting a flu shot? Very simple. And this is not like publishable research, but it's introducing 100-level students to what that notion of empirical research is, that there's some kind of initial question, an intervention, and then a follow-up. And it got them very excited, especially because they found that it seemed to make a difference that they told people about flu shots. I'll let you look at these later. I have a couple of examples of particular courses at 100 and 200 levels, one from my own institution in a Sculpture 1 class, and one from the Rochester Institute of Technology, an experimental psych 200 level course. But as I suggested, that Caruxtis and Elgren book that's cited here, Research Supportive Curricula, have lots of these kinds of examples. And of course, there's lots online with inquiry-based learning, et cetera. Okay. Do we have time for questions now, or do we need to move? I didn't look at, yeah, what is this? Anybody want to ask a question while we're figuring out if we have time? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the question, if you didn't hear over here, is about what about interdisciplinary courses? I struggle with that a lot because I think truly interdisciplinary, if we're using the methods and the epistemologies of 2 really different disciplines, that's very sophisticated work. So sometimes I say, well, the distinction is made with multidisciplinary, so that we're bringing in various perspectives, but we're not necessarily saying that I'm a practitioner in both. So I would want students to understand that these come from 2 different traditions and have some sense of the epistemology, and yes, how they can inform one another, and to realize that, you know, this is highly valuable and also really sophisticated work. All of that is to say that I value that very much. I kind of feel like it's hard without getting rooted first in what those 2 different disciplines are. So what's the verdict, Anton? Okay, other questions? Anything else? Or anybody want to respond to that about interdisciplinary research?
I'm curious if you're aware of any institutions that have tried to begin this process like, let's say, the school or college level, and they said, we're going to try and map this out. If we think about Ed
Could others hear that? So the question is about whole colleges or meta-disciplines, groups of disciplines, looking at their curriculum in that way, maybe through backward design, or to look at how that fits together holistically, and whether I know of any that have done that. Outside of colleges of education, I can't say that I have seen that explicitly. One of the chapters of a Kerr book, a Council on Undergraduate Research book that I wrote, is on humanities skills in general. But it sounds like that replicates what Ed and his colleagues have done too. So I think there are lots of resources for people to be able to have those conversations. I just don't know about it. Like the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at my institution has said to me a million times, I wish we could do that. But you have to get the consensus, I guess. Were you going to say something, Ed? I know. He's a dear friend of mine, Herb Childress, yeah. 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 Thank you. Is there something else? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about like some of our summer, so we have a summer research program, 10 weeks, where students delve into a research or scholarly project. And some of those have been interdisciplinary. Last summer, we had a student who was a double major in dance and chemistry, and she choreographed a dance about DNA replication that was intended to teach laypersons about especially cancer patients or people who had a loved one with cancer, about how certain cells replicate, or how some of these processes occur through the dance. Well, okay, so she had to be her science had to be clear, a really clear understanding, and then her ability to choreograph dance has to be really clear, of course. But she's not advancing new knowledge in chemistry necessarily. Like she's not, experimenting or whatever. So she's kind of bringing a pool of knowledge to create something new out of that. Do you have experience, does anyone have examples of that in a class? Most of my examples I can think of are in those more sustained research programs. Anybody do team teaching that's where students are doing multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary projects?
This is not too, but we've had, I think, some good success. I think in some of our humanities classes, our religion and philosophy classes, where students may not have the deep philosophical original work in just as a philosopher that's come from a different disciplinary background and bring an interdisciplinary focus to a philosophical question or a theological question. So, our students have been able to, our nursing students often end up going to religion conferences and present the work that they've done in their classes. So, for some topics, I think that interdisciplinary approach in the classroom has worked pretty well. Especially if maybe the student isn't able to contribute with the background they have new knowledge to the study of Kierkegaard, but they can bring something from an interdisciplinary approach that looks at the problems that he's addressing in a different way, and that's been pretty successful.
That's neat. We're starting next fall a series of interdisciplinary honors first-year seminars. So the first year is on water, and so students can take a science-based one or a humanities-based one or social science-based one, whatever. But then the idea is that those faculty are in a professional learning community with each other, and that they're going to visit each other's courses, and kind of a loose kind of team teaching approach. So I hope that they'll have that, our honors program will have something they can share out of that experience.
And
Yeah.
we have something similar. It's not really a class per se, but in our interdisciplinary studies, they have to do a capstone. That's their major, and they have to have at least 2 disciplines involved that they're integrating in that final paper. And sometimes it's 3 or 4. And so they have to integrate data coming across multiple disciplines into their own coherent question that they're trying to answer.
I think I'll end there. Thank you very much. Look forward to, and then I'm going to be available to talk if anybody wants to unpack some of this some more. Thanks.